Hey everyone, Road to Boston Day 3 is here, and we're going to be back with another type of hill training that's going to be really important for anybody who's getting ready for the Boston Marathon, and that is marathon pace hills. So as somebody who lives in Central Florida myself, I have to really kind of plan to do hill training. I have to go to certain locations because there's not a lot of hills. In the last video, I showed you a location when I was talking about the downhill fast reps. That is basically, it's an overpass over one of the interstates by me where it's a nice safe hill. I'll show some videos of what that looks like here again. And it's separated by a cement barrier, but this is what I've got. You know, I've also got some places that I can go that's a little bit further north of me that are really, really good for longer hills. We'll talk about that throughout the series when we talk about rolling hills here in a few videos. If you have any questions about where this could work for you, if you're from, again, the Central Florida area, maybe around Tampa, shoot me a message down in the comments and I can definitely tell you where's a good location that's close to you. But marathon pace on hills. So this is kind of tricky, especially for the Boston Marathon. That's so downhill at the beginning, so uphill at the end. People really want to have a specific pace that they're targeting. So how do you do marathon pace hills? So there's a couple things that you can set up in terms of your protocol that can help this. First off, in the last video for the fast, 2 up, 1 down, we talked about eccentric load. The reason why I don't recommend doing a lot more than like 3 reps of those downhills, watch that video number 2 in this series if you have any questions specifically on that. But also we're going to be doing these other types of training I would recommend that you're going to be getting some downhill practice. And this is also going to help with that eccentric load to help bulletproof those quads, to preserve those quads for the end of the race, which is really something that people don't realize when they're running the Boston Marathon, how much that eccentric downhill stretch can really mess you up on the second half of the race. It's not just the uphill at the end that causes issues for people. So marathon pace on a hill. So we're not really going to be chasing pace in particular because again, we've got the uphill downhill nature of it. You really want to be doing these types of hills maybe after you've been doing, those downhill fast reps we talked about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And then you add this in as a second type of hill training. But again, I mentioned in the first video in this series, you've probably been doing a good amount of training. I'm assuming that this is in the middle of your training block. So you've already been doing, your marathon pace specific, outside of your long run training, and then maybe some marathon pace work in your long run. So you should know what marathon pace feels like, not only what it feels like in terms of RPE, but you probably have an idea of what your heart rate is supposed to be at marathon pace. I usually recommend people should be, over 150 to 155 is kind of the ideal, what a lot of the science says. Definitely not over 160. If you're over 160 on your marathon pace days, you're probably not actually in marathon pace, or maybe you have a heart rate monitor that's not really super accurate. So knowing what it feels like and what that is in terms of your heart rate is pretty important when you're doing this, because we're going to be doing this based more on feel, in terms of the intensity level, and then you're going to want to be looking at your heart rate too. So what can this look like? So you're doing a good warm-up, 2 miles, whatever it is, and then in the case what I use, that hill that I've shown in this video here already, that hill is about 400 meters up. So we're talking about, a little over 3 minutes. But then you're not stopping like on a short hill interval like I talked about in the second video in this series. You're continuing that marathon pace effort on the downhill. So we're talking about, 6-ish minutes of on when I recommend doing these marathon pace hills. So you're going up, you're keeping that effort where it should be. You're, looking at your heart rate, making sure it's not spiking up to like 160, 165, 170. And then on the downhill, is your heart rate kind of recovering? Like let's say it gets up to 156, 157 on the uphill. You're kind of maintaining that general effort on the downhill, but it's, come down to 155, 154, 153. That tells you you're right in the sweet spot in terms of what this is, because you should be recovering a little bit on the downhill, even though you're still going relatively fast. This is something that's going to be happening throughout your Boston Marathon experience because of all the hills that are going on here. So you can't be chasing pace. Don't chase pace on this day. Chase the intensity, because you're going to have that downhill nature of it as well, and you're going to recover a little bit on those. Chase what the intensity feels like and keep that heart rate in mind, like I'm saying. And then what I do on this day, so I go all the way up, all the way down, it's about 800 meters. So again, we're talking about, 6.5 minutes, something like that, when we're doing it. And then I actually just kind of recommend not going into like a true recovery, but almost like a float. So if you're doing like a fartlek, something that's not truly like an easy pace, but something that is really like you know, not truly easy, but not hard. So like, let's say your marathon pace is, let's call it, you know, 7-minute pace. You're kind of doing that kind of intensity. Again, we're not doing pace, but it's an easy way to talk about it here. When you're doing that flat, you know, little bit in between, where I recommend like 2 to 3 minutes of kind of a recovery, you know, maybe instead of it being 7, maybe that's 7:30 or 7:40, but not truly like an easy pace, which in that case would probably be like 8:39 or something like that. So you're not fully recovering. You're still keeping that load on your body a little bit so that your body gets some of the benefits of what a marathon pace workout might be when you're doing it. And I recommend that for like 2 to 3 minutes. So you're doing that kind of like cycle on of 6.5, 7 minutes, whatever works for you in terms of the hill. That's just what works really well for me, because it's about, you know, that length. With the recovery cycle in there. So, you know, it's like 3.5 minutes, because it's, you know, 800 meters for the uphill and downhill for me. And then, you know, that 2 to 3 minute cycle. So we're talking, you know, again, like 6.5 minutes for each cycle. And then I repeat that 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, something that feels fairly manageable. This should not feel as hard or intense as a true marathon pace dedicated workout, where maybe you're going out and doing 30 minutes at marathon pace, 40 minutes at marathon pace, something like that. So it's a little bit less. And because of that, this is a specific training type. I wouldn't actually do this in replacement of a marathon pace workout. So if you have that, find times in your training. You know, I do this only maybe 3-4 times for my athletes that are doing it. If they're, you know, running, you know, a good amount, they're running, you know, 6 days a week, something like that. This is something that can be a good benefit, but it's not replacing some of that other training. It's not replacing the fast uphill, downhill reps that I'm talking about. This is not replacing your dedicated marathon pace work. Or maybe it is in a situation where you're doing it early the next week, but you're going to want to make sure you're doing those continuous marathon pace efforts. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You're probably doing these already if you're at this point in your training, but that's what this workout is. It's kind of an accent addition to what you're already doing with the other hills we talked about in the second episode in this series. This is something that's adding to your marathon pace. It's harder. You're learning how to do it on hills, but you're only doing it probably 3, 4, maybe 5 times in your training block, just because it should not replace that true marathon pace effort that you're doing for, you know, 30, 35, 40, whatever it is in terms of your training. If you have any questions on that, again, we're going to do a video later on. This is not replacing that. This is in addition to it. So this is a pretty strenuous part of the year that you're probably doing this. Again, we're probably about 2 months or so, a little bit less out from Boston Marathon when you're watching this video. The training is supposed to be harder now because of where you are in the training. You're going to be able to use and recover from this. But if you do have any questions about how this could fit into your own training block, you can ask those in the comments down below, or maybe more importantly, you can schedule a free training session with me, training gap assessment as well. There'll be a link in the description down below if you want to kind of see how this might be able to play into your actual training. So, you know, 3 videos down, we've done 2 on hills. We're going to do at least another on hills here with our Road to Boston series, but just keep that in mind. This is kind of the second type of marathon, second type of hill training that we're talking about. Keep that in mind. Don't do this every week. Don't replace your other marathon pace work. Use this to kind of add to your general fitness as you're getting ready for the Boston Marathon.